And I think we are live. So, oh, hey, there's David.
Hello.
We're all here. Nice to see
All
you
right.
all.
Sorry about my confusion.
No confusion. Perfect timing. So,
Yeah, I'm going to try to
welcome.
make this bigger.
Yeah,
There
everybody's
we
kind of.
go. Right.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
welcome to another episode of Quarantide. Who thought 6 months later we'd still be here doing this? And thanks to Eventide for hosting this. And so this is so exciting, I have to say, because this project has been such a long time in coming, and I'll introduce everybody in a second, but basically we're here talking about the release of a new recording that's going by the name of Buzz. And the common theme here is insects. And so it's kind of really cool how it came together. It's being released tomorrow in Bandcamp, and we'll put the link out. And all of the proceeds are going to the Xerces Society, and we're really psyched to have Matthew Shepard from the Xerces Society here. And a lot of the sounds that you'll hear on the recording were recorded by Rex Cocroft, who is with us today from the Midwest. And then we have Victoria Bond and David Rothenberg that are composers and performers, such as myself, and that have contributed some of the works along with some other collaborators. So I'll start this by I'll introduce Victoria, because that was sort of where we knew each other first, and Victoria was way back when, one of the first composers that ever wrote a piece when I started playing electric viola. And came up with some really cool ideas. And so why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and about the piece and the part and the project and all that.
I am so interested in the way we communicate. And I don't mean by we, just human beings. I mean animals. And now, of course, my universe has expanded to insects. And that is thanks to Rex, who really made me aware of a very fascinating universe, sound universe that insects inhabit. So this was really a fascinating exploration, particularly since the insects that he sent me were not the kind that we're used to, like crickets and cicadas that sing out in the open, but these are insects that actually play an instrument, and the instrument is the plant that they're on. And they're so tiny that in order for them to communicate, sort of the World Wide Web insect style, and so the way they communicate is by making these very extraordinary sounds, which I found so expressive. They're not just chirping sounds or buzzing sounds, but they're rubbing, scraping, all kinds of different rhythms. And it was just this palette of colors and sounds. And Martha, knowing you and the electric viola, and the fact that you have taken a traditional instrument like the viola and opened it to another universe of sounds using electronics, it just seemed like we should marry our imaginations here and have a duet. It's a duet with nature. So it was wonderful the way this evolved, and it's been many years in the evolution. But I think just like don't certain insects take about 7 years before they can evolve and come out of the
Exactly.
bait and do all the fun things that you can't do underground. So here we are. Our pieces have mated and they're flying about.
Yeah, I think it came off really well. I was listening to it before. I was actually dancing. There's one of the movements that has that kind of a samba
Right,
to
right,
it, and I was
exactly.
dancing around. So and so Rex, you're the common factor here with your amazing sounds that you've culled. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, and how you came to find the sounds and what you're doing. And
Well, I had kind of a long, winding, random journey. I was actually, I was wanted to be a biologist when I was a kid. Then I was a music major actually in college. I was a classical piano guy, and but I got back into biology, and just through a whole series of coincidences, got into animal communication and animal sounds. And um, something that I've always loved about that is I have this kind of secret passion to just hear the sounds. And I just love the sounds. And so I love the science about them and how they evolve and how they function, but I just love the sounds themselves. And it's really fun to hear you and Victoria talking about them, because one of the things that I really love about what you've done with these sounds is both that you're very respectful of the insects, like you give them their space, but also you treat them in a way that's really different from some of the ways that natural sounds appear, like in some classical music traditions, where they're almost an extra musical allusion to, okay, it's spring. No, you both treat these as sources of musical ideas, and you just take them on their own terms and go with them as musical ideas. And the first time I ever encountered that was in hearing a string quartet that Victoria had written that had a frog, and I knew exactly what species of frog it was from South America in the string quartet, and it just has this little upsweep. And instead of just treating this like, oh, here's a frog and we're outside, it's like, no, here's a really interesting musical idea. And then she just took off with it. And so hearing this with these tree hoppers has been absolutely wonderful, because I love the sounds themselves, and then you all have taken them and expanded them into new horizons. So this has been tremendously fun for me.
Yeah, cool. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But let's go over to David and tell us about because you work. You'll hear, well, you all will hear, hopefully, when you get the recording, that the insects are used in very, very different ways, or they collaborate with us in very, very different ways. So that's what's really cool. David, you actually go out into the field, and have them crawling all over you when you play, right?
Well, yeah, I've been interested for a long time in how human beings have learned so much musically from other animals. I started playing music with birds and then whales. And then maybe like 10 years ago, I started thinking that, I really should look into insects, because insects are the source of rhythm, and humans' love of rhythm and noise. It comes from evolving in a world full of bugs. This may not be entirely the mainstream view, but there isn't much mainstream dissent with this view either. I just think, think of the August evening with all the katydids, crickets, all these rhythms were around us wherever human beings were evolving in the savannah, in the rainforest. We heard all these sounds. This is where we got first interested in rhythm and noise. And I got interested in this because I started working on a book called Bug Music. And I wanted to really delve into what did we know about insect music and what could be found out. So I decided to go to the meeting of the Invertebrate Sound and Vibration Conference, where I met Rex Cocroft. It was in Missouri. It was in Columbia, Missouri. And this was an amazing gathering of people studying the sounds of insects and vibrational communication in invertebrates all over the world. And everybody gathered there. And what's so fascinating compared to birds and whales is there's so many species, so many different species. Very often someone was focusing on one species. No one else in the world had any idea about what that species was doing, because there's so many other species to study. But immediately I was fascinated with this idea of kind of insects communicating in a way I never had thought about, which was like tapping, vibrating the stalks of plants and trees. And this laboratory that Rex is running is the center of world research on this. No one has done more research on these amazing sounds. And I was also amazed to learn that although Rex in his lab is using complicated technologies like the laser vibrometer to precisely measure the vibrations of these tree hoppers, they were discovered by a guy in Sweden named Frey Ossian-Nielsen, who used a glass straw to listen to these sounds. I think most people thought he was crazy and didn't believe anything of the kind. And he actually wrote a book called Insect Drummers that depicted what he was finding out first in Sweden, and then decades later, we know so much more about. So these sounds are tremendously suggestive, evocative, and what's great about working with them, and like as Victoria and Martha have done, is for a human musician and composer and performer to get the most out of the animal world, we have to change our notion of what music is, expand our sense of musicality, to really learn from these creatures, not just stick them into our music. Learn from the frog, learn from the tree hopper, learn from the cicada and cricket, and we'll make a different kind of music that expands human music into the world.
Yeah, that's expanding my mind also as we're talking. So Matthew, so tell us a little bit about the Xerces Society and the significance, and then we'll tie it all together.
Yeah, well, I mean, the significance of insects is that, if we didn't have them, we would not, there'd be so many things in our lives that we wouldn't have. Or, you can look at the kind of impact of pollination upon our food, and you walk through the grocery store and you realize just how much of the produce on the shelves comes thanks to the action of a pollinator in a field, all the way through to the fact that if we didn't have slugs and snails, I mean, not insects, but all part of the invertebrate life, or the burying beetles that get rid of dead things, and the others that chew up the leaf litter, we'd be knee deep or deeper in waste, and it would be a pretty nasty place to live in. So insects touch our lives in ways every day that we don't realize, but they're often just looked down upon. People see them as a pesky thing to be got rid of, or something to squish or swat away. And the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation is, we stand up and we say that that's not quite right. We need to treat these animals with respect. We need to be doing more things to make the world better for them, because in the end, it'll be better for us.
Yeah, very true. I think we need to refocus.
Rachel Carson, an honorary first member, or one of the early members, because the information about DDT and pesticides was so important in Silent Spring, and that was written how many years ago?
Just over half a century ago. So yeah, no, the work of Rachel Carson was profoundly important to many people, and particularly to driving the what we now consider to be almost mainstream, environmentalism, conservation. Rachel Carson, her work was fundamental to that, and led to the first of the Earth Day celebrations, and all sorts of other things occurred because of Rachel Carson. I mean, the Xerces Society, we're not quite half a century old yet. We'll be half a century old next year. We were founded by Robert Michael Pyle, who's a butterfly scientist, a lepidopterist, and an award-winning nature writer. In fact, he's now got a movie to his name as well. There's a movie released just a couple of weeks back based upon some of his books.
Yeah, it's like a feature film about a lepidopterist, right? Someone like him is the star, but it's a kind of dramatic story.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. It's a tale of
documentary.
Of no, it's
is it the Kingsman or something like that?
No, it's called The Dark Divide.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, okay.
No, it's all right. I don't know about the Kingsman. I remember there being a Kingsman movie, but I thought that was more.
Yes,
like,
but I think they had a Lepidopterist or whatever.
Oh, they might well have done. Yeah, no, and yeah, insect people, entomologists turn up all over the place in crime stories and all sorts, because there's also fascinating things. But yeah, so it was Bob Pyle who founded us back in 1971, because he realized that there were these other organizations being set up to save the panda and save bears and wolves and eagles, but someone needed to step forward and say, let's save butterflies. And so we started as a butterfly organization and then expanded to take in other insects and finally all invertebrates. So we do work on everything from endangered bumblebees and the monarch butterfly all the way through to slugs and snails and the forest floor. So we encompass the full breadth of invertebrates.
There was also a film called Microcosmos. I don't know.
That's a
if
great one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
great,
that was a
beautiful.
fantastic, yeah.
Yeah.
So Matthew, what does Xerces do like directly? So
Oh, yeah, sure, directly. I mean, we work with people all over the place because in the end, the most important thing that we can do is to put habitat on the ground to make sure that there are places where the insects can live, where they'll be safe, where they have the food they need, where they'll be protected from pesticides. And so we have a team of people across the country who are working with farmers and foresters and land managers and park managers, gardeners, and anybody who has space and can put in a few flowers and make sure there's nest sites and such like available. And so we're doing a lot of direct hands-on work. We also do a lot of education and outreach. We used to go out and do hundreds of events every year, but thanks to the pandemic, we've had to stop going out. So now we do a lot of webinars and a lot of meetings online, and produce brochures and reports and so on, because we want to make sure that whoever you are and wherever you are, you've got access to the information that will allow you to take practical steps. Because it's the more people we can have involved taking little steps, little actions in their own yard, on their own back deck, wherever they are, whatever land they have available, then we can transform our landscapes.
And don't people need to change their attitude, their relationship towards the insect world? I mean, we've sort of been at war, at least the public in general has considered insects, as you said, pests. They're something to be feared and disgusting, and you want to get rid of them. So I would imagine changing hearts and minds, as they say in the military, would be a really important step.
Yeah, it is, and that's where projects like this one are so great, because it opens people's eyes, or in this case, their ears and their minds, to things they'd never considered. So often all you need to do is to get someone to stop and slow down and actually look and appreciate what they have in front of them, what they have around them. And then you can make them suddenly realize that, whereas they thought maybe, oh, well, bees, oh, you mean a honeybee, don't you? And then you say, well, you've got hundreds of species, and some of them are bright green, and some of them are golden, and some of them are stripes, and some, and then all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I didn't know that. And just getting people to slow up and begin to take note and notice of what's around them can be transformative.
Yeah, that's a great segue. I have a little bit of a slideshow to show you, because I've been doing a lot of research on this, and
Great. We're ready.
So once you see this, so this sort of sparked the idea for the artwork for the CD, but check out this guy. This is like, I look at this guy now. Are you seeing him?
Yeah,
that's a tree hopper. That's Platycodus vittata, right? Rex knew it right away, even before because I did put the credit, this wonderful photographer, Matthew Chickanese. I found it online. And I just thought, that's just so amazing.
Like a jewel.
It doesn't look real, and yet it's perfectly real. And so I created one of the tracks on the recording is called Platycodus 9. And it's because I use 9 tracks of the Platycodus sound, which I found on Rex's site, the little sample of Platycodus. And so I borrowed that and did a little processing. And so I have 9 tracks of Platycodus and then 9 tracks of viola, all being processed through my Eventide H9. So that's why it's Platycodus 9. So, oops. So anyway, the as you'll see on the name of the band, I created a name called the Superfam Memorcordia Collective. And that is because I was, tracing back tree hoppers, leaf hoppers, what it's all, and it's all part of this super family Memorcordia. So I thought, how cool to have a band called Super Fam Membrocoidia Collective. And it's all scientists and musicians who, you know, are doing this in support of music and insects together, collaboration, you know, it's like a big symphony or chamber music. And on one of the tracks that David sent me is a collaboration that he did. Maybe you can talk a little bit about this with Pauline Oliveros, who she passed on a few years ago, but so inspiring as a composer, performer, and deep listener. And so you got to work with her quite a lot of times, and you have this collaboration with Pauline and with Tony Levin, who's another icon. So let me, I'll unshare the screen so you can.
You can keep that up. It doesn't matter because you can still hear
Okay.
me, right? Yes. So Pauline Oliveros is a fantastic composer, accordion player, kind of philosopher of music, coming up with a whole approach to life called deep listening, which she taught at many institutions and to the public over the many decades of her long life as a musician. And she also lives in the Hudson Valley, north of New York City, like I do. And I remembered I had first heard these 17-year cicadas in 1996 when I moved here. And then years later, when I heard them again in Missouri, a different brood of cicadas, and started listening and learning from them, playing along with them. And then I started thinking that we could do some kind of musical event in 2013 when they'd be back. And a lot of people said, oh, Pauline Oliveros did one in 1996 in Kingston, a cicada festival. And so I asked her, you want to do another one? She said, sure. And I thought about Kingston. I said, oh, would you like to play with Tony Levin, the great bass player, worked with Paul Simon, Peter Gabriel, King Crimson, the Stickman, all these groups. He goes, oh yeah, I know that guy lives down the street. I never played with him. I said, well, this is an essential opportunity. And so I asked Tony, he said, of course, anytime. And so we did this, unlike this image here, which is from a concert Pauline and I did in Prague in 2000, this was 2014. In 2013, we were outdoors with thousands of singing cicadas around us. And Tony was playing electric bass and the Chapman stick, which you play with two hands, a lot of strings. And then all these cicadas were all around. And we also had a few close mic'd cicadas that were inside a butterfly, butterfly trap kind of cage. They weren't as big as this cicada, this one was harmed, but not by me. No cicadas were harmed in our concert. This one came as a present from my brother. This is Cicada speciosa, which sounds like a suspicious name, but maybe it's a real name. And I think that would probably come from China or somewhere in Asia, this particular one. You guys might know exactly. The periodic ones are a lot smaller and friendlier, but we had some right there on the microphone that could sing on cue. And so we did this live performance, which has never been, it's not entirely true. It's never been released until this album tomorrow. It's been around, but it's never been released. The only collaboration between Tony Levin and Pauline Oliveros. At the end of the concert, she said, you know that bass player, he's pretty good. so that was really fun to be able to do that. And that's one of many cicada concerts Pauline and I did over the years. I'm sorry she's not still around.
Yeah, well, in her memory, certainly her spirit is strong. Mm-hmm. So we have a question from David Haskell, and it's kind of involved. So I'm gonna read it. Mm-hmm. In what ways do the particularities of the human body manifest in the pulse and tempi of music? For example, does bipedalism steer us towards 2/4 or 4/4 rhythms in the 40 to 120 beat per minute range? How might listening to insects, parentheses, 6 legs, vibratory organs, no larynxes, expand the foundations of human music making?
I'll chime in. One of the fascinating things I think about the insects that I found through Rex and that I used in Buzz is that they are actually playing instruments, which I think is very interesting. So, I mean, I guess 6 legs are a big advantage when you're playing an instrument. I think a lot of pianists wish they had 6 legs or 6 arms. So I think that the way, first of all, you can't really hear them like you could hear a cricket or a cicada because they're too tiny. So they have to be amplified. And actually, the sound of the plant that they are playing, I would imagine, is a very important factor in the way in the way the sounds are generated. Now, as far as the human body, of course, we have our heartbeat, which is not exactly the same for everyone, but it's around 72, as I understand it. And so, typically, if you want to something that's going to be more exciting, you speed up the heart rate. If you want a lullaby to calm you down, you slow down the heart rate. So those are general things that I think go through music of all times. And I don't know. I'd have to ask Rex. Does that apply to insects as well? Do we know the heartbeat of an insect?
Well, yes, you can. If you watch some caterpillars, for example, you can watch their heart beating because they have a heart that runs along their back, and so you can. But it's slower, and you can watch them do this while they're feeding. In fact, I can send you a little video I made this summer of where this is happening. So you have these two rhythms, and they seem pretty different. But on the other hand, a lot of insect rhythms do come, like just from, as David's question, would imply for humans, and as you mentioned, our heartbeat, but insect rhythms come from flight. So they do a lot with their flight muscles, and those flight muscles are constrained kind of by the size of the insect and the nature of their wings and what they're doing. And so that does, there is a perfect tie-in there from their locomotion into their music making.
I wonder why so many of these insect rhythms are also comprehensible to humans, also at a similar, pace to what we think of as being rhythmic, like katydids going, or even like the kind of trills of crickets are very pleasing to our ears. Is it just by the chance of evolution that they are, or is it that we evolved our sense of aesthetics in the midst of all these sounds? As David Haskell, author of The Songs of Trees, by the way, great book, as he's mentioning, the general view about where human rhythm and the pace of our music comes from has to do with walking and the heartbeat, the kind of biological rhythms of humans. But I think that we can't overlook that we evolved in the midst of insect sounds. This is nothing new, the idea that insects are musical. It's nothing new.
When you think about art in general, it's our reaction to the world around us. We take whatever materials we find around us. And when you were talking about primitive people being so affected by the insects, well, I mean, insects are all around us. There are millions and millions of them, and sometimes they're very loud. So I can imagine that would have been really a very primary influence in people's sense of rhythm and pattern, form.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when there was one of the big cicada years, and everybody was writing pieces using cicada sounds or inspired by the cicada rhythms and the sounds. And I think unknowingly or unconsciously, we are inspired by them, even if we don't like when a mosquito bites us, or some whatever other things that we don't like about bugs, but we are so inspired by them. Walking down the street and you hear a cricket and it's beautiful, you start humming along to it. Another viewer is saying, is the insect rhythms based on temperature, or are insect rhythms based on temperature?
The speed of trills of certain species of crickets slows down when the temperature gets cooler, and katydids as well. So if you're experienced, you could estimate the temperature by hearing how fast and what the pitch of those certain species of crickets are. That will slow them down. And
yeah, that's true of those katydids too, right? Like those katydids you were talking about, right? I kind of have a preferred temperature of hearing those. I like them on the cooler side. You hear them, and for any kind of muscle-driven sound, like the tree hopper sounds too, they're also they're all permeated because their metabolism is just driven by temperature.
Yeah, often it's a very beautiful sound. It gets cooler in autumn, and there's fewer of all these creatures, of which there are usually so many. It gets chaotic. It's a simpler, slower, perhaps more comprehensible sound. And in doing the research for my book, Bug Music, I was amazed to discover there's literally thousands of Chinese and Japanese poems about the sounds of crickets in autumn when it gets cooler and they come in the house and sit on the hearth and try and stay alive just a few more weeks. And it's seen as this kind of melancholic and emotional and kind of a sense of the changing seasons and impending death. And there's literally thousands of poems like this. And one entomologist in Canada, in Montreal, who ran a museum there, he collected all such references he could find, Keith Kevin, and he published 6 self-published giant volumes, each 500 pages in length, of all this poetry, all about the sounds of insects. That's it. There's that much material. And when he passed away, he wasn't done. There was more. All these books are sitting right over there in that box. And there's really amazing material there, just showing how human culture has been so impressed by insect sound for centuries.
Well, apropos the sounds, and this is another question for Rex, I think they're very expressive. Do we know what these insects are actually expressing or saying to each other?
So yeah, what we in many cases, like some of the recordings I sent you, well, I didn't even see the insect, and so we could only speculate. But in a lot of cases we do, but it's also kind of an interesting time to be in the field of animal behavior and animal communication, because when I was first getting into biology, things like the subjective experience of animals were considered to be completely taboo and unscientific, and now there's a whole field of affective neuroscience and all these new tools. And so there are even papers recently with titles like An Emotion-Like State in Bumblebees. And so and part of the reason I think some of the correspondences of David was saying, well, why can we appreciate insect rhythms, is we have our nervous systems share many of the same components. A neuron is a neuron, and we have many of the same constraints, and we have the same signaling molecules. And so people are still reluctant to use terms like emotion when it comes to insects, but emotions have very clear, have very important functions in animals, and they seem to also in insects. And so it's a really fun time to be studying things like animal communication, because we can actually begin to think about questions like, well, what is it like for a female bird to hear the song of a male bird? Mm-hmm. And in fact, there was a study a few years ago by an undergraduate that asked that very question, and the answer seemed to be that they use the same parts of the brain that we use when we're listening to music we like. And then she looked to see, well, what is it like for a male bird to hear the song of another male bird? And it was similar to the, just based on what parts of their brains were involved, to what we might experience hearing music that we disliked.
Get out of my territory.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's. I was also discovering the term metacrosis, right, which has to do with changing. I like the title, The Secret Power of Animals and Insects to Change Color, and whether to blend in with nature, so they won't be attacked, or to actually stick out to make themselves more attractive for potential mates, or to appear to have superpowers to ward off predators, like, I'm bigger and redder and louder and whatever. And so that inspired me to create a piece called Metacrosis, which takes the sounds of the insects. I think I used 7 different insects from Rex's collection, and I put them through different processors through my plugins, my Eventide plugins. And so the same sounds, I created a kind of a symphony with them, and the same sounds are repeated, but they sound so different because they're being processed. For example, like, if I play, I put them through different processors through my
Oh,
plugins, my Eventide plugins. And so the same
somebody's
sound.
got their Facebook on. They have to turn it off. Okay. So this is this is not what the viola sounds like. If I was to turn everything off, the viola sounds like this, right? But when I plug in, and this is what I did with the insects, so the same basic sound in it. And I'm going to show you Victoria's score that she wrote called Buzz for me to play is notated out. Whereas, let me see, my score for Metacrosis is just this, just exists as different. These are the different colors of different processes that I use, and these are all the different sounds. Each one of them there's a heteronotus and some of the other ones. So this is the whole Metacrosis piece. It's about 10 minutes long.
That's how you did it. I love that piece. I'm just gonna. I just heard it today. I'm just gonna live with it and listen to it over and over again. And I wonder, well, how did you do that? Because here's this beautiful membrasis from Ecuador, and then there it is, but totally transformed.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to be very respectful of them, but the rhythms would change depending on different algorithms that I used in the processing. And so, I mean, it was, it's like an artist when they mix colors and they come up with totally different colors. So that's how I approached this particular composition. So okay, so this is one of the algorithms, Shimmer. This is what it makes it sound like it's otherworldly. And okay, I'll come back because I know that we have Cynthia is back. Cynthia Daniels has joined us from East Hampton, from Monk Music Studios. And now you're going to have to take your mute off. So Cynthia was the first one that actually heard all of these sounds and put everything together so that all the volume, well, you explain what you did, Cynthia.
Yeah, the insects came to me not too long ago. Your world of insects and interfacing your instruments in that natural world. And I just wanted to present it, listen to it as a full piece and master it. Just match some levels, lift up a little bit of this, snip and tuck a little bit of that. And overall make it as cohesive a singular piece as possible in case people are listening from beginning to end. And that's, I really enjoyed it and was constantly surprised. I love the amalgamation of the live instruments. We're finishing up the session here. We're doing the disinfecting. I'm not.
You should show us, give us a little look at your studio. She's got an amazing studio out there in East Hampton.
Oh, I don't know. Your world looks really amazing too. We're just finishing a session. It looks like a studio. I think the best part of my studio is that after spending 43 years in windowless rooms, it was pretty much that's my assistant, pretty much non-negotiable when it came time for me to look out the window during a mix or let the people see. Let the people see. Have some light.
Question for Cynthia.
Sure.
Cynthia, did you find that mastering insect sounds brought any particular challenges that you hadn't come across before, and all the other sounds you've worked with for years?
That's a good question. I have worked with Martha Mooke's music quite a bit, and other palettes that were I always appreciate either an experimental, a sonic, a sonic landscape that's more experimental. And yeah, I would say that each piece could have been treated really differently, and normal, and would be. That is not an insect, that's a cat.
Zoe.
And I went for the kind of clarity and fusion that I might go for with electronic music. I think that, nature sounds in general are, natural sounds are potentially more limited in their spectrum. That is, we may not hear what goes on above and below. So I'm not going to say that the natural world is in any way limited. In fact, the mice and the deer know that 4 to 6 hertz, which is basically the frequency of the tectonic plates moving, that are known as an earthquake, they know before we do. And there are many supersonic frequencies above our range of hearing, of course. But those that are present, they're just instruments. So it's, electronic clarity and using the expanded frequency spectrum that you get with electronic sounds that really stretch beyond the natural realm, are actually harder to deal with in terms of mastering or mixing than natural sounds. It's just as you found, it's a flute playing, it's another string, it's just the sound of a triangular wave. I'm sorry, that's my wing. What sort of waveform does a cicada make? So I think actually ultimately we probably imitated natural sounds with our instruments rather than the other way around, and then electronic instruments just kind of blew the whole sound stage apart and said, no, there's nobody sitting in an orchestra, nobody has a seat, we're just going to seat you anywhere. Strings aren't over here, basses aren't over here. Now any seat in the orchestra is open to interpretation with regards to its role in the arrangement. How's that for a long-winded answer?
I like it. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Had to think about it on the spot.
Good.
Well, Martha, you
No,
were saying about notation also, which is really interesting because, of course, notating insect sounds, I think one would have to be very approximate. As you know, Messiaen notated, or at least tried to notate, bird sounds as exactly as he could. But with insects, it's the timbre, I think, that is something that is so very particular and individualistic. And the reason I wanted to notate your part, because this really is a duet. It's a suite of duets, is what Buzz is. And I wanted to be able to interpret the pitches and the rhythms of the insect voices and songs in a way that was sort of a set of variations on what I heard, not simply imitating them, but doing developing them as a composer would any set of pitches and rhythms.
So
there's the score. Okay.
Here's one of the pieces. So you also have my notes of the some of the effects that I used, but this is the part that I played, and this is the one I was dancing to.
Right.
And it's so cool, to go back and listen to it again, after, because when you play and when you record something, you're with it for so long, then to leave it for a little bit and come back to it. I really enjoyed listening to it. That's not always the case with recordings that I make. And hearing that, the dance that you created for us, for me and the leaf hopper from Ecuador to do is tree hopper, chorus, all of them. And this is another one of the movements. So there's 5 movements and Victoria's piece called Buzz.
Well,
And
I'd like to picture you dancing with these various insects.
I really was. I had it on
Maybe
my
an
phone. I'm
animated
like, oh,
film.
that's so cool. Because I had it processed, my sound processed through a ring modulator. So it doesn't sound like a viola. I sound more like an insect.
Well, that's what's so fascinating about what you did as an artist, as an interpreter, and as a composer and collaborator, was that you didn't just say, okay, this is viola and insect. The viola itself has a whole set of variations in terms of timbre and attack and decay and all of those elements that are part of the sound enhancement that you do with the electronics. And so yours is a very interpretive way of hearing and reacting to the sounds of the insect. I loved it. You're very, so musical.
Thanks. Yeah, it's like we're definitely all morphing into each other. And David, you also use electronics in your work with the
Absolutely.
insects.
I've taken tree hopper sounds and pitched them and granulated them and made people sing overtones singing along with them on the album I made called Bug Music and things like that. And I'm often thinking about turning like purish clarinet sound into something more like some other animal. And I think that it could definitely change your idea of what is a musical thing if you listen to these insects too much. If you listen to a lot of tree hoppers, you'll have a whole different sense of how communication between males and females might go. Just in general, these rhythms, these uneven rhythms here and then you get a different sense of what counts as music because, it's not so radical to say that animal communication is closer to music than to language.
Yes, yes, yes.
Why it's not radical is you have, say, these birds repeat these same patterns over and over and over again. They're all trying to do the same things, defend territory, attract a mate. So if a chickadee is going dee-doo, 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 and they're all doing this, and then you have like a mockingbird is singing an hour-long song with all these different parts, these rhythms, and they're trying to do the same thing. The function of it is identical. The difference is an aesthetic one, something that Darwin wrote about. He said, many animals have their own aesthetic sense, like birds in particular, he said, appreciate beauty. That's why they evolve beautiful feathers, beautiful songs. It's like musical communication. Music, we can hear the same sound over and over and over again, the same song. We still like it. We don't think it's boring. It's the same how these birds are listening to each other. They're hearing these same short phrases. It's what they need to hear. Somewhere in their brain, something goes off with just this one sound, which kind of relates to when people are hearing songs and they've already heard them 1,000 times. They still like hearing them again. It's not like language. It's like music. And we don't know exactly what human music means. Why is this song so powerful? We have no idea. What does it mean if it's just instrumental notes put together? What does a Bach chorale or solo cello piece mean? We have no idea, but we know it's important. It communicates a lot. And I really feel that what's going on with these animals is often closer to music than to language, where every sound stands for something special. It doesn't have to mean something. So,
I've got a question to all of our insect experts here, and that is, we know that there is an animal that likes to get together and sing in chorus, and that's wolves. I happen to love wolves for that reason. I mean, what more musical thing than getting together and singing in a chorus just for the joy of it? Do insects also have this sense of communal music making?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm sure David would agree that they definitely do. Even some of those periodical cicadas that David knows so well. Well, they even have a kind of synchronized song and dance. There's one species, if you watch a tree, you'll hear this like a song, and then it's like the tree is breathing out cicadas, and they come back because they sing and they fly out and they come back. And so, and tree hoppers are actually very, I like Martha's title because they're very collective and collaborative, especially when they're younger, and they're like the masters of cooperative communication. But I also have a sound kind of taking up on David's thoughts about animals, sounds, and music is for you musicians and composers. To me, listen, when I go out and listen to insects, tree hoppers, or leaf hoppers, I feel like I'm experiencing the products of millions of years of evolution that are exploring kind of new transects through acoustical space. And so to me, there are combinations of sounds, things that just have not been put together before. But I don't know if that's, if you would agree with that there are musical surprises in listening to these insect sounds.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, I think that it was a surprise, as I say, that they were so expressive and had so much variety. And when you're talking about an acoustic space with the tree hoppers, that space is the plant itself, is it not? That's the transmitting acoustical environment.
Yeah, with tree hoppers, you're really hearing this kind of insect sound that people don't think exists.
Mm-hmm.
I have not seen anyone who's not shocked to hear it. I even played these sounds for E.O. Wilson, who was my freshman biology teacher. Years later, when I was talking about insect sounds, I was playing him one sound after another. What do you think this is? What do you think that is? And he did not know what these tree hopper things were. And when he heard that it was, you could see the smile on his face that, he was just so excited that such a sound was out there and that people were studying it and excited by it.
I have a question, because a lot of the samples that I see, they say male tree hopper or whatever. So why are they mostly male? Is there a different call, or how did you know?
Well,
Did you check them before you recorded them?
Yeah, well, you learn to recognize them pretty well, but females are also very communicative. As immatures, both sexes are equally communicative, and yet it's sort of an interaction between what those females are looking for, what they find attractive. And so there's kind of a template in the female's nervous system of what she's going to find attractive and respond to. And her response is often simpler than the male song. But it's the females that are really the aesthetic creators here, because they're determining what's successful and what's attractive. So they're the listeners, but they are shaping. It's those female perceptions that are shaping the evolution of those male songs. And so the males are kind of the instruments, and this female nervous systems, in a sense, are the ultimate composers. And so it is true that in most of these species, it's the males are singing those more elaborate songs, just as the way it is in many birds. Males are more colorful and sing louder songs, just because of the way that evolution and sexual selection is working in so many species. But it really, the creative force ultimately is in the minds of the females.
So the female is really the judge of this, right? She's the one that gets to say this one and not that one.
Right. Yeah, it's the females that are driving the evolution of the male songs by their preferences and what they find attractive.
This reminds me a lot of the Joseph Campbell's work with the great myths of human myths, where we initially, the first storytellers, first humans, revered nature, knew they were part of nature, did not consider that they were separate from nature. And so much, of course, has changed, even with the advent of language, and not only imitated it, but the female in all the earliest myths is the life giver, and it ain't no myth. And so it seems completely consistent that we would, all of this would be reflected in just this way. I love that. I've heard so many symphonies of tree frogs, and and you talk about the acoustic spaces, like just the different animals that live near the water versus where their habitats and how they communicate within these habitats. But those choruses of the tree frogs, as I walk through the forest here whenever I do, which is often, I live right near the woods and on the ocean, it's quite amazing. What a symphony I suppose if we were talking about chickens and eggs, we could say, well, it came first. First
Millions
song,
of years of these insect sounds.
first, yeah, composing.
I have another question. So just like different people like different kinds of music, and some of us like to listen to Mozart or Bach or jazz or R&B or whatever. heavy metal or hip hop. So is there anything like that in the animal world, in the insect world, where they prefer one style over the other?
Hop, hop, I think.
But you can consider the 17-year cicadas, right? When they arrive, the different broods, there's like several species come out at the same time. And as Rex was mentioning, there's and they all have this genus name Magicicada. They're like magical creatures. When they were named, people knew this was pretty crazy. They came out every 17 years. So one species, Magicicada septendecim, makes this pharaoh sound, pharaoh, pharaoh. And if you hear literally millions of them, it's a droning sound. The tail disappears. It's all like an ohm. So this species has that aesthetic. They're making a solid tone. You're going to hear that when they come out next year around here. And then at the same time, there's another one, a Magicicada cassini, and that makes the sound that Rex referred to earlier. Each individual one goes, and these together make this wave sound because they all make this sound together. They synchronize and then they fly and then they come back, and you see this. And so then you hear these waves from this species going shh. And the thing is, these creatures look almost identical. They're making the sound. And again, the males are just doing it, this sound in the species, vibrating, their abdomen, not with their wings. And somehow each one makes this different variety of this noisy sound. And these two species are completely distinguished by this aesthetic. So one of them likes this rhythmic wave, and the other one likes a drone. And I had a good time giving a talk at Yale with John Cooley, who studied all these things for decades. And I said, this is a musical style difference. And he said, I never really thought of it, but, it does make sense. So yes, you're absolutely right. The different insects are going for a different style of synchronization. We can all have an ohm, or we can all have a rhythmic wave. Two species of cicada, millions of them coming out every 17 years.
I love how that I'm getting this image of, these big dance halls and,
We better we're going to plan a cicada festival. It's going to be somewhere around here for next spring.
Oh, yeah.
When they're here. And Martha, anyone else, you should all be part of it. They come out in East Hampton, I think, this brood. You can check the map, whether or not that's true. And we should all be in on this somehow. We'll figure it out.
Definitely so.
I don't know where the vertebrate sound and vibration meeting is, the next one, but Rex must know.
Probably virtually, right?
Yes.
Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. It's still being decided.
Right.
So there was another comment, and then we're at the hour mark, so we'll kind of do a close up, and then I want to just end with the image of the album cover. But there was a question. Somebody said, the panel prompted me to look up a dispute in the Journal of the Acoustical Society of America, where a paper, quote, analysis of acoustic communication by ants was rebutted by a letter, ants are deaf. That title still makes me laugh, ants are deaf. But seriously, the dispute was whether the ants in the paper were responding to pressure waves in air or vibrations through their legs. I think question was directed to David, because you were talking about studying insect vibrations.
I think Rex should answer that question.
Well, it's kind of an old question in insect sound and vibration is which is it? And there was a study with cockroaches of all things that showed that their vibration detectors, the special vibration detectors or subgenual organs in their legs, are actually pretty good ears because they're right next to a kind of an air-filled trachea in the leg that vibrates. And so it's not just one or the other, because airborne sound sets structures into vibration, and some insects are pretty good at perceiving airborne sound, not through a tympanum, but because of the way it causes their body to vibrate. And it can also be because of the way that causes what they're standing on to vibrate. So, if deaf means that you don't have a special structure for perceiving those pressure waves, well, maybe you could argue that, but sound and vibration are so closely intertwined in insects that often there's a question that really hasn't been addressed in the field, but that I wonder about is how do they tell the difference? Because how do they know when it's sound and when it's vibration? Because they're often picking them up with the same little interneurons in their nervous system are processing both. And so anyway, I don't
says
know
there
if that
now,
really answers the question, but it's a little bit, semantic. Well, of course they can perceive acoustical sounds, but how exactly are they doing it? I think is what the question
just
is.
as you can wear something called a subpack to feel music while you're dancing to it or mixing it or hearing it. Like we also feel music as much as we hear it. And one thing I remember from that conference in 2011 was that there seemed to be a continuity between sound and vibration when it came to invertebrates and probably also vertebrates. Like you can't always tell when one is just one and one's the other. We're feeling and hearing sound at the same
And
time.
of course, you know about Evelyn Glennie, the percussionist who is allegedly deaf and feels the vibrations through her feet through the
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, also now, people are really becoming more aware that they're losing their hearing if they listen to music at really loud volumes. And so that was a project I was looking into a couple of years ago, was how could we perceive that we were listening loudly like we were used to in a dance hall or disco or wherever we are, but it's not. We're feeling it, so we're still perceiving that it's loud.
Mm-hmm.
So is that something that what you were talking about, David? If a pack that we feel that you wear?
Yeah, if you ever tried this, when you add this sense of feeling the bass or there's some things you hold also, or bracelets. Once you have this, you don't want to take it off. Like it adds to the musical experience. And I think it makes you feel a little bit like an insect, because as Rex pointed out, the difference between feeling and hearing for these organs on the legs that insects have, it's unclear. And so we can make ourselves a little bit more like bugs by enhancing our ability to feel sound.
And when you think about an instrumentalist, I mean, Martha, you have the experience of holding an instrument. Certainly you feel the vibrations, maybe less with the e-viola than with a wooden viola. But, you think about a bass player or a cellist that has the instrument right next to their body. And those vibrations certainly are a very important part of the experience of making music.
Yeah. Yeah, we can go down a whole other rabbit hole, just, talking about that. But this has been so fabulous. I'm so delighted that you're all here, and we're all all part of this, and very excited for the world to hear the birth of Buzz.
Thanks
tomorrow.
so much for coming up with this idea and for getting us all together. It's really been
yes. Bravo to you. Bravo to you.
Thank you. So we'll put the link up. I just want to show the I showed the picture that it was based on. So you're seeing this here? So the name of the band or the collective is Super Fam Membracordia Collective, music in harmony with nature. I just sounded like that should be. So this is the page that you'll see on Bandcamp when it drops tomorrow. And even if you could see it today, wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow, Bandcamp Friday, first Friday of the month, and they donate all of their proceeds, their revenue shares goes back to the artist. And in this case, all of the proceeds are going to the Xerces Society. So even that you can get there's 10 tracks, and it's about 55 minutes of music on here. You can get it all for $10, but you can also pay as much as you like. So if you want to support the Xerces Society, you give them $100 and you're going to get the music, and there's the CD cover comes, you can download that. There's program notes. So you get quite a lot in there, but mainly spread the word and spread the awareness. And let's just I come back to listening to the insects when the world outside gets a little too busy. So we'll put the link up on this. You'll be able to find it under Superfam Member Cordia Collective. And let's bring it back.
Yeah, what a beautiful transformed mandala out of that tree hopper that you made.
Didn't it? Yeah, isn't that cool? I'll
Yes.
show you the original one again for people that just joined us. Oh, here.
Yeah.
That's the original image. And here's the album cover. So I put that image so you can see the eye of the tree hopper there. And it just became such a gorgeous image. So I'm trying to see if I can animate that, and
Yes.
and maybe that'll inspire some more music to be created, or just some love to be put out there. So I want to thank all of you folks for everybody. You know, this is a labor of love for everybody, and you know, it's a labor of love and life. And so let's just, closing thoughts, everybody will go around the David Cicada there. Rex, thank you
Well-
so much for you know, being the, you know, the translator, I guess, in a way, translating the sounds so that we can have access to them.
Well, I just hope that you are open to getting more of the same, because there are a lot more great sounds out there, and I would love to keep sending them to
Please,
you
yes.
and Victoria and David.
Yes, indeed.
Volume 2 on
Thanks.
the horizon.
Thanks so much for being so open and sharing your sounds with musicians like us. And more people should be listening to Bugs, taking them musically seriously, and you can just listen outside. It's happening now, and pay attention, join in, and listen widely, expand your sense of what music can be by taking the insect world as your collaborators and makers of music in your world.
Well, we may have hip hop music, but here we have hop hop music.
Get your chirp on.
Right.
Yeah, Cynthia, thanks
thank
for
you.
joining us. And
It was an honor to have your beautiful metamorphoses
That's
back
Kafka
in my
would say.
studio and through my hands. And thank you for letting me put my hands on it, and ears, mostly ears.
it's a
Well,
beautiful
bravo to
project.
you, Cynthia. Really brilliant job.
And
I
well,
love hearing this. I'm sorry I came late to the party because
yeah,
it's
well, you
really
can watch the rerun.
fascinating. Yeah. Time and time again.
And we'll let Matthew Shepard of the Xerces Society have the last word as the beneficiary of this, and hope that you spread the love as well. And you're doing an amazing thing for this.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. I mean, I feel honored to have the last word, and I'm not sure I can have anything quite as profound as I've been listening to for the last hour. Yeah, this is wonderful. Thank you to all of you for what you've created and for bringing us in at this late stage in the process. And yeah, any money that's raised and comes our way, we will make very, very good use of it. It'll go to support some amazing work. You know, I was saying earlier, we create habitat, you know, hundreds of thousands of acres of new habitat each year. We stand up to protect endangered species. We reach out to people and try and open their eyes and ears to what's around them and make them appreciate what there is and immerse them in nature. So thank you to every one of you for that.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. And thank you to Eventide for hosting this, and James Frazee for being our behind the scenes technician, and everybody go out and listen to some insects and do some dances with nature, be in harmony. And I'll end with the screenshot there, and listen to some Buzz starting tomorrow. So thank you so much. Love you all.
Buzz forth.